Thank you for joining us today with the Idaho Community Luncheon and the Idaho Falls Rotary Club. We've got an exciting program for you today, and we have exciting programs lined up all month this month. So every Wednesday, please remember to tune in and join us. And next week, Wednesday, we'll be having a presentation, a panel discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on our community's nonprofit organizations. To start us off with our Rotary program for today, I'd like to jump to our thought. Rotary's motto is service above self, but during these challenging times of the pandemic and protests around our country, many of us are asking ourselves, what's the proper course of action to take? Over 85 years, Rotary has used a way to guide our individual and collective action. The Rotary four-way test. The test is the cornerstone of all of our actions. It has been for years, and it will be in the future. The four-way test is, of the things we think, say, or do, 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? The 4 questions challenge us to think before we speak and before we act, and to reflect and research what is the truth, how will it be fair to all, how will it promote goodwill, will it build friendships, and how will it be beneficial to all concerned? I believe if we can all use the four-way test, we can make progress together as a better community, a better state, a better nation, and a better world. And that is one of the foundations of the Rotary Club internationally. It's my pleasure today to introduce Dana Briggs, our program chair for the month, who will be introducing our program today. Thank you again for tuning in, and thank you for allowing Rotary to be part of your day. Dana?
Okay, thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure today to introduce our program, who is Chief Bryce Johnson from the Idaho Falls Police Department. IFPD had a productive 2019, and 2020 is bringing new plans and projects to fruition, as well as some challenges and things that the Chief's leadership has been particularly vital in. Chief Johnson will speak to us today about a variety of points, reviewing the last year, as well as looking forward to the months ahead. Chief has been with the Idaho Falls Police Department since August of 2017, and he came to us from Juneau, Alaska, where he had served as the chief there for 4 years. Before that, he was with the Salt Lake Police Department for 21 years. Chief holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Utah and a Master of Public Administration degree from BYU. One of the strengths that Chief Johnson brought to Idaho Falls was a belief in community policing, and he places high importance on working with the public to address concerns and keep the communication lines open. He takes pride in the good work of the officers at the Idaho Falls Police Department and considers it an honor to serve them and the citizens of Idaho Falls. So with that, I will turn the podium over to Chief Johnson for our presentation today, and after his remarks, Michael Blennis will officially close our program. Chief?
Thank you, and I'm just going to assume there's someone watching this because this is a new format for me, and we're in kind of an empty room here, but hey, that's the world we're in today. So it's been almost 3 years since I got to sunny Idaho Falls, and I will tell you, I have fallen in love with this city, with this community, and with this police department. As the time went on, I tried to get out with all the officers and ride with them, and I was out riding one night with one of the sergeants, and we went to a disturbance call, and there was a fight that was going on, and I'm looking, I was like, oh, this is real police work, just like anywhere else, and this fight happens, and I look at this guy, and he's got this great big knife that he's holding as they're in this fight, so it's a little intense as we come up, and the two people engaged in this fight, they take off running and go in opposite directions, and so me and the sergeant I was with at the time, who's now a lieutenant, we decided we got to chase these people, but they went in opposite directions, And we took off in opposite directions, but we picked the wrong direction. So we ran into each other as we were running and kind of banged into each other and fell back. It kind of felt like one of those comedy cop shows where you see the officer fall down, and I kind of stumbled a little bit. But so I picked my guy, and I went after him. And he was 18, 19 years old. And I was like, man, I'm getting a little old for doing this. I don't know if I can catch an 18, 19-year-old anymore. Luckily for me, he was a little intoxicated and couldn't run probably at full speed. So I was able to catch him after a little while and got him arrested, and we took him to jail. So I learned really quick that although Idaho Falls is a wonderful, great place to live, and it's a great police department, that we have some problems as well. Problems that happen in every other community, they can happen here as well. And it's really, really important to have a full-service police department that really is doing a good job and ready to take care of the citizens. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the year 2019, and review 2019. So all this data will be from 2019. I'll briefly cover what's happening the first few months of 2020 after that. But mostly all of the stuff we're going to look at is from 2019. We'll look at some statistics, the highlights, some of the takeaways. When we look at 2020, I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID-19, how we're responding to that, a new building facility, the architect that we've got for that, and kind of what's coming next. But first, number one, if you have questions, I understand you can shoot those questions in through the live stream, and I'll try to take some questions at the end of this. And I'd just like to quickly address kind of what's going on in the city and around the country right now. I think everyone watched what happened in Minneapolis and thought that was just wrong. And the officers here in Idaho Falls had the same feelings and the same emotions and the same opinions of what happened there. And then we've watched what's happened around the country as we've seen protests and then riots and then looting. We've been very grateful here in our great city to have some fairly robust protests. I think people have come and wanted to express their opinion, and they've been able to do that. And it's been an opportunity for folks to say what they want to say and to get their message across. And that is what's supposed to happen in this great country of ours. People are supposed to be able to exercise their First Amendment rights. I think I read somewhere that you have the right to peaceably assemble, that you have the right to petition your government, and that you have some freedom of speech. So we've been very grateful to have those protests take place and to see the system work and the process work in that manner, and to not have it devolve into other things. With that said, we as a police department also wanted to be open to the community and open to a conversation. So we are going to have, I don't want to call it a barbecue because it's not really a barbecue. We'll cook a few hot dogs, but we're going to be out on the Greenbelt, kind of across the street from where the Parks and Rec building is and the law enforcement building is. We'll have some police officers out there from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. this evening. We're happy to listen to anything you have to say, have a conversation with you. We'll have some boards up if you don't feel like you can talk and you just want to leave a message, you can leave the message. The officers will have a chance to communicate with you. We'll have some messages from some of the family members of officers, kind of how they're feeling right now, what it's like for them to send their loved one off to police the city in this kind of heightened state of angst. So hopefully you'll be able to join us tonight, this afternoon from 4 to 7 there at the Greenbelt, and we can have a constructive two-way conversation. So hopefully that gives you an opportunity to come and talk to us. So for 2019, I'm going to go through some of the statistics and the highlights and the takeaways. The IFPD is broken down into a couple of bureaus, a couple of divisions. We have a Patrol Bureau, Investigations and Special Operations Bureau, Logistics and Professional Standards, and then some sub-bureaus would include Animal Services and our 9/11 Dispatch Center. And if you could go to the slide here for staffing, one of the challenges that we had all through 2019, really going back several years and continuing to 2020, is recruitment and retention of police officers. As we sit now, we have an authorized strength of 96 police officers. Putting that in perspective, that's been really good. We've had several positions added over the last couple years. In the past decades, we had an authorized strength of 90 police officers. So as the city has grown quite a bit, the police department has struggled to grow at the same pace the city has grown. But even though we have 96 authorized officers, right now we only have 82 police officers that we can deploy. At different times during 2019, we were down as low as 77 and 76 police officers that we could deploy. We had so many vacancies, and we had hired people, but they were in training and undeployable. So it was really a challenge through all of that year to get our work done with the number of people we had to do the work. And I'm quite proud of the work that the officers did in stepping up and getting things done, even though they were so overwhelmingly understaffed. In total, the Idaho Falls Police Department has 144 employees at our full authorized strength. That would include dispatch, animal services, patrol, and some support positions as well. If you can go to that next slide, the calls for service. So this is how many calls that the officers took over 2019. You can see in 2019 we handled 49,425 calls. That is about a 4% increase over 2018. So even though our numbers were dwindling down a little bit in how many officers we had, they handled 4% more calls than they handled the year before. While calls for service were going up, crime was going down, and that's an interesting dynamic I'm going to try to explain. So if you look at the crime rate, the total crimes in 2019 were 6,236. In 2018, it was 6,710. So that's an overall crime rate drop of 7%. So total calls went up 4%, but crime rate dropped by 7%. Our violent crimes, the most violent crimes, they were down by 9%. Property crime was down about 14%. And then the more lower level crimes were down about 5%. So overall, that's a really good trend. We see our crime rate going down. At the same time, calls for service went up, crime rate went down, our clearance rates actually went up. What a clearance rate means, it's a crime that we investigate, that we solve, and we're able to say who did it and make an arrest in the case. So we had more calls for service, the officers were busier, we were able to bring crime down, and of the crime we investigated, we were able to solve a higher percentage of that crime. So the most violent people crime, our clearance rate was up 14% that year. In 2019, the more serious property crimes, the clearance rate was up 1%, which is probably not statistically significant. And then some of the other clearance rates, you can see there at 15 and 10%. So that's a really good trend. We're able to solve more crimes than we were solving in the past. So what does that mean? Reported crime down, crime rates went up, but total calls for service were up. What's happening is, in addition to investigating crimes, we have a community caretaking function. There are lots of things that we do to just help people out. A big part of that is mental health, but welfare checks. There's a whole bunch of things that we do that are not necessarily tied to a specific crime. And those community caretaking functions are going up at a higher pace than what the crime rate is going down. And that's why the police officers are busier now than they ever were. If you can go to the mental health slide there, you can look at our mental health calls for service. In 2017, you can see it was 901 calls. In 2018, 932. In 2019, 1,109. We're at a 19% increase on mental health calls from 2019 to 2018. If you go back further in history, those increases in mental health calls have been double-digit increases every year for about the past 5 years. This isn't just a trend in Idaho Falls. This is a trend across the county, across the state, and across the country. Every police department and sheriff's office in the country is having significant increases in the amount of mental health calls that are going on. This year, during the COVID-19 shutdowns, those mental health calls really skyrocketed up, but that is not included in this data. This has nothing to do with COVID-19. The mental health calls are just significantly increasing, and it's drawing more and more of the officers' time to respond to people in crisis and their mental health calls. Something new that we have started doing, so this will be the first time the Idaho Falls Police Department is reported on use of force, and hopefully it's timely with the conversations that are happening around the country right now. About 9-10 months ago, we started documenting our use of force in a reportable form. That we always documented the force we were using, but it wasn't in a statistically reportable format. We corrected that in this past year, and we're now able to statistically analyze what our use of force rates are. So as you can see, the Idaho Falls Police Department, we responded to 49,383 incidents, calls for service, where we're out there doing police work, interacting with the public. In 2019, we made 2,538 arrests, and we had 122 use of force incidences in those arrests. So if you're breaking that by percentage of every police contact when we're out there in the community interacting, that's a use of force rate of 0.2%. What that means is in 99.8% of the calls that the officers go on, there is no force used. If we're just talking about arrest, and that's where we're putting handcuffs on people and taking them somewhere, we're physically arresting them, there's a 4.8% use of force rate in arrests, which means in 95.2% of arrests when we're taking people into custody, there isn't force used. That 122 number, we have about 60, give or take 60 officers in patrol. Real quick math would tell you that that's about 2 times per year the average patrol officer would have to use force. A year is I guess it's a little bit of a long time. We count birthdays by years. They're not going out every day and using force. They're not going out every other day and using force. They're not going out every week and using force. They're not going out every month using force. They're not going out every other month and using force. It's about twice a year. Once every 6 months, the typical patrol officer will have to use force in one of their calls. So it is a very big topic, a huge topic in the community, and rightfully so. But to put it into context, it is a tiny percentage of what police officers actually do. Those use of force rates are quite low. The other thing we started collecting in this past year is demographic information on who we stop. So the idea being is these are the stops that the police officers self-generate. If we're dispatched to a call, we just get dispatched to the call. We go, and whatever's there is there. But when we're self-initiating the activity, and the officers are choosing to make the stop and to create the incident themselves, we thought that was the best place to look for patterns and to look to see where we fit, how we're doing, especially when it comes to demographics, race, and things like that. So you can see these demographics up here. This is not a full year of data. We weren't able to do this for the full year. But you can look at Caucasian, white. We made 6,415 stops. That's 81.39% of our stops. On the website where you look at demographic data that's drawn off of the U.S. Census, you can find it on the City of Idaho Falls webpage, the demographic data. Caucasians make up 81.4% of the population. So I will see data, and those numbers will not match up exactly. I was kind of surprised to have those numbers match up that closely. To have 81.39% of our stops on Caucasian white people, and to have them make up 81.4% of our population, that would seem to indicate that we're policing in a fairly equitable manner. Hispanic folks, we made 1,060 stops on people of Hispanic ethnicity. That's 13.45% of the stops we made. And according to the census data, they make up 13.8% of the population of Idaho Falls. So again, that's really close to the makeup in the community, just a tiny bit below. With the African American community, we made 122 stops on African Americans. That's 1.55% of the stops we made, and they represent about 1% of our community. So again, very close to the numbers that are representative of the community. Native American, Alaska Native, 23 stops, 0.29% of the stops we made. Less than 1% of the community. So some of those percentages are really small, so 1 or 2 stops will move those percentages quite a bit. But the data would show that the officers are out there making stops based off of reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and the behavior being seen. They are not making stops based off of factors that are illegal to make the stop off of in the first place, such as race. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about patrol. Patrol is led by Captain Joel Tisdale. He's a relatively new captain. One thing if you come to the police department, we have a really, really young police department. We have a lot of officers that have less than 5 years on. And we have a relatively young leadership team. Almost all of us have been put in our position in the last 2.5 years. And Captain Tisdale is our new patrol captain, and he's really brought a new, fresh set of eyes to patrol, and it's really exciting to see what he's doing with it. So patrol is the biggest part of the department. The patrol officers fall under his command, as well as our K-9 program. Currently have 2 K-9s, probably looking for a third, but that's a subject for another day. Our neighborhood police officer program, those are the officers assigned to specific neighborhoods, mostly in the numbered and letter streets, and they're trying to get closer relationships and more of a community-oriented policing focus. The gang unit, I sometimes get asked, why do we have a gang unit? We don't have any gangs in Idaho Falls. We do have some gangs in Idaho Falls, but we would like to keep that from being a growing problem, so we enforce it and track it. We also have a traffic unit. We added motorcycle officers in the last year, which is something we're pretty excited about, if you want to put that slide up there. We have 2 motorcycle officers, 2 motors that are able to do traffic. It's a really more efficient and effective way to do traffic control. It's also a really good community-oriented policing tactic as well. People are much more likely to come and talk to an officer that isn't in a car. So it's been immensely successful, the motorcycle officer program. The self-initiated activity from patrol, this is something they've been working on and they would like to do more of. You can look at the traffic stops that they've made. Now, when you go back to the demographic data and you have the stops that were made in the traffic data, we weren't able to track demographic data for the entire year. So the total number of stops will not match up to what this information is on how many stops the patrol officers made. The demographic data is about 7 months worth of data. It's not the full year because we did not have the capability of tracking it before that. But the traffic stops made in patrol, you can see it went from 8,342 in 2018 to 9,550 in 2019, which is about a 14% increase. It's still not to the level where we were in years past, but again, we had so few officers that were actually out working, and the call volume is going up. The officers have less and less time to do proactive work, but we're trying to be more efficient and do a better job with the proactive time that they do have. These are traffic accidents, if you could look at that slide. So they handled 1,774 damage-only traffic accidents, 376 injury accidents, and 555 hit and runs for a total of 2,705 traffic accidents in 2019. That's a lot of traffic accidents. Please drive safely. Officer-initiated calls for service out of patrol. So this is, again, where officers just self-initiate the activity. They're seeing what's going on in the community. You can see in 2018 it was 16,172 proactive patrol enforcements they were able to do. In 2019 it was 17,657, so a 9% increase. Again, our number of officers was low, but the volume of work that they were handling continued to go up, and they were really, really doing a good job. Our next bureau I'm going to talk about is Investigations and Special Operations, and that's commanded by Captain Bill Squires, and he's been there for a couple of years and really does do a great job. He has the detectives, crime scene investigations, forensic investigations, evidence, the Special Investigations Unit, which would be things like narcotics, school resource officers, the SWAT team, the bomb squad, internet crimes against children, or ICAC, digital forensics. Every case these days has a cell phone, an iPad, some sort of electric device on it. So there's just a ton of digital forensics that we have to do now. He has the records system, and then we also have the 911 Emergency Dispatch Center. So 2019, I talked about already that our calls for service were up, our crime rate is down, our clearance rates were going up. Statistically, it looks like a really good year. In 2019, we were able to solve the Stephanie Eldridge and the Angie Dodge cold cases and make arrests in both of those cases. Those were department-wide efforts. Everyone in the department pitched in and helped out with that. And we were very, very, very humbled and very, very grateful to bring some justice in those 2 cases and bring them to an arrest. There's still a court process going on, so I'm not going to talk a lot about them, but those cases have been around for decades, and it was a good thing to find some answers and to bring those to a conclusion. Also in the Investigations Bureau is our bombs. I went the wrong way. Forgive me. There we go. Our investigators were assigned 797 major crimes to investigate in 2019. These are major crimes. So last I checked, there's 365-ish days in a year. So that's a couple of major crimes plus every day that's getting sent to the investigators. So they carry a pretty big caseload. You can't finish a major crime investigation in one day. They take quite a bit of time. So they do a lot of really good work. There was a big stretch of time during that time period, especially through the Me Too movement, that our sex assault reports were just coming in faster than we'd ever seen them before. And they took every one of those cases and did a full and complete investigation in them and just put their heart and souls into those, and they just do an incredible job on that. Our bomb squad is actually a combined team with the Idaho Falls Police Department and the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office. It resides at the Idaho Falls Police Department, and we have command over it, but it's a combined effort. And we do services for all of eastern Idaho. Over 2019, the bomb squad responded to 30 call-outs and calls for service. That's 30 explosive devices that they went after. Probably the one that was closest to home was when someone brought a hand grenade into the courthouse. The police department and the courthouse are connected, so I was sitting in my office, and all of a sudden there was a hand grenade in the office next to us, and it was really nice to have the bomb squad come to be able to dispose of a hand grenade. And they respond to explosive devices all over the area. Evidence, we processed 2,746 new pieces of evidence in 2019. That's a lot of evidence coming in. Our evidence room is full. Every piece of evidence that comes in has to have a piece of evidence we do something else with. So that's a lot of evidence going in and out. Digital forensics, that's the cell phones, the computers, and that type of work. We did 256 digital exams of those devices. Downloading 35 terabytes of data, and my brain does not understand what a terabyte is. I'm told that's a whole lot, and we download over 35 terabytes of data. There is the detectives that do this, they have to see some of just a lot of the officers and detectives. They see just some of the worst things that happen in our city. And the stuff that they're having to download off of some of these devices, the stuff that they have to look at is just heartbreaking. And they do just an incredible job of taking care of child victims and finding justice for people. And it's unfortunately way too busy in that area. Our Special Investigations Unit, or our Narcotics Unit, there's 3 IFPD detectives that are doing that. And again, we partner with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office and other agencies kind of up and down the I-15 corridor. Drug traffickers and criminals really don't understand where Idaho Falls ends and another jurisdiction starts, and they move their drugs back and forth. So we try to work very cooperatively between the jurisdictions. In one case, it was a cooperative case with the Sheriff's Office and with the state police. They were able to seize 18 pounds of methamphetamine in just one case. There was also a case just a couple of days ago where they seized several pounds of methamphetamine. So there are a lot of drugs moving in and out of our area, and they are actively working and trying to get as much of that off of our streets as we possibly can. Our Logistics and Professional Standards Bureau, I get asked about that sometimes. What the heck is that? And that is a really busy place. So that encompasses training. A lot of talk about training right now. Control holds, arrest techniques. That stuff just doesn't magically happen. You have to have someone that's planning the training and executing the training. And there's a tremendous amount of work. So they do training, recruitment and hiring, internal affairs, internal investigations, logistics and equipment. We have a unmanned aerial program, a drone program where we fly drones on crime scenes and take pictures of crime scenes. We can also use the drones for missing children and things like that, and they take care of that. We have a thing called a trust team. We're really trying hard to take good care of our police officers because, as I said earlier, we expect these police officers to go out and to deal with the worst in society. They go out and it was 2 days ago, if you read in the newspaper anywhere or online, there was a 5-year-old child victim that was really tortured if you're looking at what happened there. And these guys are right there. These officers are right there, pulling that kid out and getting them to safety. And, you know, they're investigating sex assault, some of the most brutal crimes, child abuse, child sex assault, domestic violence. The brutality of humanity is right in front of them, and that hurts people over time. And then you put someone through 20 years of that, and then you wonder why they're different after 20 years, and maybe a bad event happens on the street. As important as internal affairs investigations and holding our officers accountable, which is very important, it's also incredibly important to take good care of our officers so that they do not become damaged, because damaged police officers will damage the community. Healthy police officers will police the community very healthfully, and it's a positive relationship. So we try to put a lot of time and resources, and we're trying to do better at taking care of our people, and that's what the trust team does. They have animal services, and then they engage in our policy and procedural review. One of the things that we're pretty excited about this year is we changed kind of our patrol schedule. Our training used to be done in blocks of training. We got about 40 hours of training per year. On our new schedule, we were doing training. We're getting 100+ hours of training every year. One of our core values is excellence. We want to do good investigations. We want a professional police officer to show up that knows what they're doing. We want to be confident in our use of force skills so that we're using the appropriate force at the appropriate time. With our new block of training, with 100 hours of training that we're able to give, that's 5 times what post requires in the state of Idaho. So we're working really hard to go above and beyond to make sure you have the best possible police officers that we can have in this area. Our unmanned aerial system, we had 536 flights. Most of those were training. They help out with 4th of July traffic. They flew the river when we had a person go in the river to try to help find the person in the river. We had a missing child case where we flew the drone to try to find the missing child. We'll use them at traffic accidents, at crime scenes to fly the scene and document the crime scene. That's part of what helps our clearance rates go up, is having better evidence and better documentation of the crime scene. One of the things I'm really excited about is this One Mind campaign, the IACP One Mind campaign. This is the national standard for how police departments are supposed to handle mental health and help people with mental illness. The requirements of the One Mind campaign are that you have at least 20% of your department, of your officers trained in a CIT, crisis intervention team training. In addition to that, you have 100% of your department, of your officers trained in mental health first aid, and that you have partnerships established with mental health providers, with advocacy groups, and all these things. There's a whole list of checklists that you have to go through to be part of the One Mind campaign. We started this in 2019 at IFPD, and we finished this year in 2020 to get all that done. We are now a fully certified, fully compliant One Mind department for how we interact with people with mental illness. Still more to be done. We still want to progress, but this was a pretty good accomplishment for us. The trust team and officer well-being, I talked a little bit of that before, is so important. We try to do peer support. We have a great relationship with Creekside Counseling. I'm so grateful for Dr. Janet Allen that does so much for us. She has just been great, and her people are great. Having those connections, and we're trying to make it so. There was a time, easily in my career, where it was not okay for a police officer to say, I just need to talk to someone. Hopefully we're past that, and hopefully our folks feel like if they need some help, if they're having trouble dealing with a very traumatic incident they went to, that they know they have someone there they can talk to. Again, healthy police officers will police the city healthily, and damaged police officers cause problems. So we're doing everything we can there, and she's just been awesome. We do critical incident debriefs. The idea behind that is if you have like the child abuse case from a few days ago, that really affects people. They take it home. We have kids. We start to think about our kids. We have a couple murders we've had this year, the death of the deputy. These things really wear on people over time. So we get them together, let them talk about it. It helps us process stuff. So after a 20-year career, we just don't blow up, and we are able to have a very healthy career and do a good job for the people. Moving on to animal services. So it is something I'm really proud of, what they've done over in animal services. Years past, our animal shelter was a kill shelter. We did not have enough room for all the animals that came in, and we had to euthanize animals simply based off of space. And that is no longer the case. In this past year, both with cats and dogs, the shelter has worked so hard, and the people at the shelter have done so much good. We no longer have to euthanize animals or kill animals simply because of space. We still occasionally have to euthanize the animals, but it's because of quality of life. They were injured, they have a disease, something that they can't recover from. It's based off of health and behavior, not based off of space. So that is a heck of an accomplishment. If I could take a feather and put it in their cap for that one, I would, because they've just done so well in doing that. In addition to that, in 2019, they handled 3,903 animals that went through the shelter. They handled 3,574 animal complaints, and we've expanded them into other ordinance enforcement to handle parking issues around the city. And so they've done 1,678 parking issues in addition to their regular animal duties. The dispatch center. So our 911 dispatch center setup is that the dispatchers are all IFPD employees. I'm responsible for all the dispatchers, but we dispatch for the entire county. So we dispatch for Idaho Falls Police Department, Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, and the Idaho Falls Fire Department, and then a couple of the smaller agencies around. And you can see those numbers. The number of dispatch calls are going up every year, year after year. That dispatch center is more and more busy each time. The breakdown is the Idaho Falls Police Department still handles the most calls, but the Sheriff's Office is sure catching up pretty quick. And then the Fire Department has their part of it, and the dispatch center covers them all. One of the things I love about our dispatchers in Idaho Falls is they really feel like they provide service for all three agencies, the Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and the Fire Department. You know, when I wear my uniform, it says Idaho Falls Police Department. I love the Sheriff's Office, but I would not put a Bonneville County Sheriff's Office patch in my uniform because I'm not part of the Sheriff's Office. My dispatchers, when we get them things with the Idaho Falls Police Department on it, they will put the police patch, the Sheriff's patch, and the Fire Department patch on. And they wear all three patches because they truly serve all three agencies, and it truly is a service model for all three agencies. And I'm pretty proud of the work they do for all three of them. 911 calls, those are the biggest emergencies. They were up last year as well. You can see they went every year. It just keeps on going up every year. It kind of tracks population. Those things are continuing to grow. In addition to all that, they also, you know, dispatchers will deliver babies. They'll help lost kids. They talked to a person who was going to commit suicide and had a gun on their head, talked them out of doing that. They did 269 cardiac arrest calls where they give CPR instructions. The dispatchers save lives, and they just do a fantastic job. I was trying to talk fast because 2019 was a busy year with a lot of good things. 2020 and beyond, what's coming next? So, COVID-19. It's not quite business as usual. You'll notice we're trying to direct more and more people to online reporting. We're telling our officers if someone can report online, they have capability of doing that, that's the better option. We'll still follow up on it. We're also doing more telephonic investigations. If we can handle the call over the telephone where we don't need the in-person contact, we're doing that. But I tell you, the numbers are just going up and up and up. The officers are busier today than they were last year at this time by far, and so everything has moved up pretty quick. And the community's been really great. We've had so many people bring us salads, pizza, food, masks, all sorts of stuff. The community's been so supportive. We've been very grateful for the response we've had from the community through COVID-19. We're hoping to build a new police facility over the next little bit. We have the land at the Stockyards. If you look at that slide right there, that's a heat map. You can see the Stockyards where we do have crime occurring in Idaho Falls. The Stockyards is right there where we would want a police station to be. We're currently working with an architect. The architect selection process went through about a month ago. There was a request for proposals put out, and there were 10 proposals returned. Of those 10 proposals, 3 of them had local Idaho Falls architects as part of those proposals. And through a pretty good selection process, we did pick one of the one of the firms that had a local presence. So it's NBW Architects and Architect Design Group are working on the design for the police department. We are hopeful to have some preliminary drawings and a design and a cost estimate by mid-July to be able to go back to City Council and talk about what the next steps are. And that's coming pretty quick. Again, the numbers so far for 2020, the first couple of months of the year, they were higher than they were last year, so I anticipate the numbers for 2020, the calls for service, to go up again this year. Crime is holding level, so that increase continues to be the mental health calls and the community caretaking function that the police have. There was a brief period of time when the shutdown first occurred that the calls went down. That was a very brief period of time. They popped right back up a couple weeks after, and so our calls for service are well ahead of where they were last year at this point. Normally we will have about 1 homicide a year. We've already had 2 homicides this year in the first couple months of the year, so we're hoping that trend ends right there. And then we do have 2 major cold cases that we're still working. We hope to be able to bring them to a conclusion. Darwin Vest and Jed Hall, the 2 missing people cases. So if anyone has any information on either of those, we're always looking for information on those. And with that, if we have questions and there's time, I could take any questions here. I'm getting texted. All right, so this is a new format for me, and I am looking for questions here. So some of the questions got sent in online, and they've been texted to me. If you wonder what I'm doing, I'm looking at the questions on my phone. So it looks like we received a lot of questions today, so we won't be able to get to all of them. If we didn't get to your question, please send me an email or get a hold of me somehow, and I will try to get to your question. I'll just go right down. The first question is, how do you propose demilitarizing Idaho Falls Police Department? This question will get me into a lengthy history of policing. I'm going to do it in about 2 seconds, hopefully. If you go back to where police were created, they were created in the 1830s in London. There was no police departments before that, and if you're old like me and you got in trouble, your mom would tell you that she was going to read you the Riot Act. I don't know if anyone out in wherever this audience is I'm looking at ever heard of the Riot Act, but what the Riot Act was in London, when things would get out of control, Parliament would literally read a Riot Act and the military would come in and restore order. And they found out really quickly that using the military to do policing functions was really unpopular. So a guy named Sir Robert Bobby Peel, who's known as the father of modern policing, came up with the idea of police departments. And the whole invention of a police department was to be not the military. The whole reason I'm wearing blue, you'll see me in blue today. A lot of theories on why the police department wears blue. I've heard because it's really tactical, it's a pretty color. I've heard all those theories. The reason why the police department wears blue and why we wear blue is because, if you remember your history, the military at that time in England was wearing red. So the reason we wear blue is to distinguish us distinctly from the military. If we look at the history of policing, our existence is to not be the military and to be separate from the military. So the militarization of the police is not a thing I'm into, and not a thing that I'm aware of other police departments being into, because our function is to be completely separate from that. And we engage in a lot of community-oriented policing and try to be more of a community-oriented police department. All right. Question 2 is... Sorry, this one's not working out so well. I apologize, my phone's not going to my questions. How are we handling protest? If there are more vocal protests, are your officers going to provide and provoke and harass protesters as it's happening around the country? So our philosophy of protest is people, I talked about a little bit earlier, but people have a fundamental right to petition their government, to peaceably assemble, and to exercise their First Amendment rights. And it is our duty to facilitate that to happen and to make sure that can happen regardless of what the content may be. These are not the first protests that have occurred in Idaho Falls over the last 4 weeks. It was only a few weeks ago that we had a very different group of people that were protesting the governor's lockdown order. And they were at about the same area with a bunch of signs chanting their message. They took their signs, walked around town. It's a different group out there doing it today. But it doesn't matter what the message is or what the content of the speech is. Our obligation is the same, is to make sure that they're able to express their opinions and get their ideas through and have that exchange of opinions, and that's what we will do. So we will not interfere with protests. We will allow people to protest. We will allow people to state what they're going to do. Protest is one of the basic American rights. If you want to talk about looting and rioting, that's a different thing. We would interdict and have a presence if we see things going to looting and rioting. We would not allow that occur, and we would interdict at that. But protests, we won't have a presence there. People can say what they want. We will help them do that. Number 3, how do you propose handling far-right extremists in Idaho Falls? The kind of the same way I just said we handle the other. If people are engaging in speech that's protected speech, then it's not my business about what they're doing. When someone crosses the line from speech into behavior and they're doing actions that are illegal, we will interdict those, and we do regularly interdict those. So we monitor Twitter, we monitor Facebook, we monitor Snapchat, we monitor all those things and look for things that are threats, that have any substance to them. We constantly do that, and we will interdict on actions. We will not interdict on speech, though. Speech is protected, and we can't do anything about speech as a police department. Community, perhaps, but the police department will not censor speech. Number 4, how do we improve relations with the Hispanic, Latino people? And that's a great question. I will tell you, I own the responsibility to reach out and to make contact with every group that feels that they are marginalized or that they are more at risk of a negative experience with the police department. That is my responsibility, and I have been able to do that in many instances. And with the Hispanic community, we have not yet been able to get that set up and done. I'm hopeful that through what has happened recently that we will have contacts in the Hispanic community and be able to have some meaningful conversations and some meaningful exchange of ideas. My opinion is the best way forward with any group is personal, one-on-one human interaction where we can get to know and understand each other. And so that's what we would want to do, is find a way to have personal human interaction where we can talk and understand each other and understand each other's perspective and how we see the world and come to some type of common ground. We've been able to do that with a lot of the communities here in town, and the Hispanic community is one that we really want to and need to do it, and I'm hopeful because we started to make those contacts in the last several days. Why are your gang files top secret? Okay. Gang files aren't top secret, but they are protected information. A gang by definition is more than 2 people who claim a common affiliation, who associate together, and also engage in illegal activity. But when we start documenting them as a gang, we're documenting information that isn't necessarily criminal information. So there's very strict laws and rules about what information we are allowed to collect on people. We cannot go collect information on U.S. citizens. We are not the secret police. We are not a police state. So I just can't go out and collect information on individuals. But we will. There's an authorization if we can document you as a gang member that we can collect information on you. Because that's not a typical thing that police departments do. That information is kept separated from everything else so that we are not releasing information on a person that is private. It has more to do with the privacy of people than anything else. All right, I think there's one more that we got here too. are officers required to have body cams turned on for all calls, if not wide? So we've made a lot of progress in body cameras. 2 years ago, we didn't have body cameras for all of our officers. Today we do. And we are not quite to the point where we can require them to be turned on for all calls. The body camera has a little bit of battery life. It will last hopefully 8 hours. Our officers work a 10-hour shift, so there are times in which the camera is just dead. We are looking for a solution, whether that be a second battery or a charging solution, something that we can always have a charged camera. Until we have enough resources to give the officers a camera that's always charged, we can't require them to always have it on. But we're actively making progress in that arena, and we're actively working towards that goal. That's the goal we want to get to. We've gotten a long ways towards that goal. We're pretty close to that, but again, I currently do not have a camera that can last an entire shift, and we're still working on getting the resources to be able to make those cameras last the entire shift. All right. I think those are all the questions that I saw come in. Those were really good questions. Thank you very much. Again, if you had a question and it didn't get submitted or I didn't see it, please feel free to reach out. You're also welcome to come down to the Greenbelt today from 4 to 7, and we'd be happy to talk to you there and answer any questions you have there. Really like to thank the Rotary for the opportunity, and I really appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. That was a great program. I appreciate all the information and your willingness to take questions from the public. And I'm excited to, I'm sure you'll have some more questions tonight when you do the event down in the Greenbelt. I would just like to thank everybody for tuning in and remind you of our upcoming June programs. On the 10th, as I mentioned before, we'll have the Idaho Falls nonprofit community and how it's been impacted by COVID-19. On the 17th, we'll be talking about rural hospitals during the COVID-19, and was it an opportunity or are they going to be a casualty of the whole pandemic situation? And then on the 24th, it'll be the future of classroom education, and also a presentation of our Rotary scholarships, where we're Rotary's proud to offer 6 $1,000 scholarships, and we'll be announcing our scholarship winners from our community on that 24th program. So thank you again for tuning in. Hopefully you'll join us for the rest of the month. And with that, I hope you have a safe and healthy rest of your week.